I was at a symposium in late 2014, and the entire premise of the symposium was that 80% of production comes from 20% of the perforations. Now, this bar graph from an SPE publication in 2011 is not quite that negative. It's saying that about 30% of perforations are not producing. However, that means that 30% of perforations are significantly contributing, at least, to your lifting costs, while not contributing to your margins and actually eating into those margins. So I think then the question becomes, how do we cut down that 30% of not contributing perforations? On top of that, in unconventionals and particularly in fractured formations, you see unusual and unpredicted water production, gas production, and then the unnecessary also completions costs associated with the perforations or with the unnecessary acidizing costs depending on what formation you're working in. And I think everybody can agree that fractures control flow. That's why we hydraulically fracture formations. And so by identifying the natural fracture patterns, whether we want to avoid them or exploit them, by identifying them, we can create a completions plan that results in proper drainage. We can avoid the unusual gas and water production in an otherwise oil-producing interval, and we can avoid the acidizing or fracturing of low permeability unfractured zones, thereby hopefully cutting down that 30%. Since fractures play a crucial role in controlling the flow, identifying the naturally fractured zones helps to create a more efficient completions plan and plan future well placement much more effectively as well. And this is our solution. So we use raw acoustic data from your wireline and LWD or MWD tools. Specifically, we are using sectored compressional data. So we take this compressional data, and the theory behind it is that, let's say you have a table and it's completely homogeneous, and you run a compressional wave through it. You hit it. And if it's completely homogeneous, the person on the other end will feel the same amount of energy pretty much as you put into it. However, on the other hand, if there is a crack in the table, then that person will feel diminished energy. And so in sum, when traversing a fracture, compressional waves drop in energy, and we are mapping those drops. Now, it's important to have the sectored part of it because we're not only finding the location, but also the direction of those natural fractures. So we want an azimuthal calculation. And in the end, you end up with a plot like this. You are looking at the third track, which is our fracture density modeling, and it contributes to all the other information you gather from the well. It can be a backup to your image log as well, which may or may not work depending on whether you're using oil-based mud or whether you have a highly deviated well leading to poor pad contact and poor resolution in your image. But either way, it adds to the information you know so you can effectively inform your completions plan. On top of that, we also do some azimuth modeling that is unique to us. And essentially, we're using flexural wave theory developed from seismology research because the tools are actually using flexural waves to create an azimuth model specifically, fascier azimuth model specifically designed for highly deviated wells. As you can see here, this was a well about 65 degrees from the vertical, and it has been well documented that above 20 degrees from the vertical, error starts being introduced into your azimuth calculations based on Alford, and this clearly demonstrates that the stress direction we calculated from Alford was 34 degrees compared to the image breakout, which was 11 degrees. Once we applied our correction model, we got 14 degrees. It's not exactly the same, but it's a lot closer, and so we are quite happy with how the correction factor helps to correct azimuth in highly deviated wells. And that's our 5-minute overview of our unique capabilities. We are always more than happy to answer questions, so feel free to reach out at the contact information pictured.